Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Radhanath Swami Niti Namini Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarini Umajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Mena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shri Utapadakkamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagagana Raghunadanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaidam Savadutam Parijana Sagitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagagana Lalita Sri Visakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kamta Radha Kamta Namostute Tapta Kachana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarvyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaye Vachapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Isvaraha Paramaha Krishnaha Satchidananda Vigraha Anadi Radir Govindaga Sarvakarana Karanam. Hare Krishna. So by the mercy of Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, we are able to successfully finish the 13th chapter, up to 13 chapters in Bhagavad Gita. We understand that all the answers given by Krishna. Arjuna asked excellent questions. So in the first chapter, of course, we understood about Arjuna's situation in the battlefield, that he did not want to fight because he has to kill his own relatives, friends, kinsmen, everything. He was able to see all kinds of relatives in both the armies. That was his situation. There Arjuna could see within the midst of armies of both parties his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his fathers-in-law and well-wishers. So he was seeing all kinds of relatives. So that was his situation in the battle. So he did not want to fight, but unfortunately he cannot stop the fight. So like wars are happening. Even now we see there are wars happening. So these things are all unavoidable. When it happens, we are in that situation, we are helpless. So that is the reality we need to understand. So that was Arjuna's situation in the battlefield, that he did not want that battle. He did not want that war, but it was forced upon him. He has to fight and he has no other choice. But he is trying to convince Krishna that why he should not fight. So, but finally Krishna was able to tell him, Arjuna, that he needs to see everyone as the soul. And he's a Kshatriya. So that means to fight for the righteousness. So that's what he should do. So that's what Krishna told Arjuna. When Arjuna told in the first chapter to Krishna that sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors, then I will be always dwelling in hell if I fight here. So I have heard by disciplic success and that those whose family traditions are destroyed dwell always in hell. And then he also says to Krishna that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts. So driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness, we are intent on killing our own kinsmen. So all these things Arjuna is telling Krishna that we are committing sins, I'm going to go to hell and all these things. So it's better for me to go and stand unarmed and let the sons of Dhritarashtra come and kill me with all kinds of weapons. So that is the Arjuna's situation, which we understood very clearly. But Krishna says to Arjuna that in the second chapter, what we studied, that Krishna told him very clearly that if you don't fight, then you go to hell. If you don't fight in this battle, so then you are committing sins. So that's what he says. So what Krishna says here, that if you don't fight, however, you do not perform your religious duty of fighting, so that is dharma. So religious means it's not the religion what we follow, that is the dharma. So that is for dharma means righteousness. So for the sake of righteousness, if you don't fight, so we can simply write here that if you do not fight for the sake of righteousness, for then you will certainly incur sins. So then only you will certainly incur sins and neglecting your duties, and thus for neglecting your duties and thus lose your reputation as a fighter. So here only Krishna is saying that if you fight here, you will go to heaven, not to hell. Hatova prapsasi swargam jitvava bokshashe magi. O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. So either way, it's good for you only by fighting it. So that way, what Krishna is asking Arjuna, that you should be doing that without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. So that is the key point. So in all our activities, like Arjuna, we are all forced to act. We don't have choices. We need to understand that. Because of our material entanglements, because we are identifying ourselves with the body, and because of our material goals. So because of not having the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, not able to connect ourselves with Krishna, the Supreme Lord, we are actually coming ourselves under the control of the modes of material nature, and we are forced to act. We are forced to do all kinds of activities in our life, daily life. So that way we don't have any choices. But we have the choice of not getting affected by the results of our activities. So that choice is ours. Whatever the result comes, if we are not affected by that result, so then that force will come down. Then that force will completely become zero. Then we will not be forced to act. So that is the very simple way to understand, very easy way to understand this important like part of our life. So that is, if we are attached to the results, then we are forced to act. If we are not affected by the results, then we are freed. We are not forced to act. That's it. So that way we are understanding. Today we are going to study the 14th chapter. So there is a 3 modes of material nature. These 3 modes of material nature is forcing us to act. So no one is free, not even for a single moment. So everyone is forced to act. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. So we are not free, not even for a moment. We are forced to act all the time. So that is the fact. Like Arjuna was forced to fight in the battle. So here, every day we are forced to act. We don't have any freedom. We are controlled by the 3 modes of material nature. That's what he has acquired from the modes of material nature. So that is called Swabhava. So that also I explained earlier. So Swabhava means one's own nature. So that comes from the modes of material nature. So that's what we are understanding. So the embodied, here Krishna is saying that we are not as a Supreme Lord, then the embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. So that's what is very important. That is the Swabhava. Swabhava means everything is by our own nature. So that's what is the Swabhava. Our nature is doing everything. So the material modes of nature are doing everything. This is a very important science. And this is applicable to everyone. It doesn't matter whether I belong to a particular religion or not, I follow this faith or not. So this is science. Science is science. Physics is physics. Chemistry is chemistry. And that is applicable to everyone, everywhere. So like that, this Bhagavad Gita science is the science about our own self. And it is applicable to everyone. Everyone is attached to this material world, material sense objects, and controlled by the modes of material nature. So that is the fact. That is the truth. Whether we believe it or not, that is the fact. So that's what we are understanding, that Krishna is saying that we are not the doer. So we don't do anything. We do not create activities, and we do not induce people to act. And also we are not responsible for the fruits of action. We don't even create the fruits of action. Everything is done by the modes of nature. If you understand this fact, this science, And if we get ourselves not attached to the results of our activities, understanding this fact very well, so then we are freed from the modes of nature. So that's what the science we need to understand about how to free ourselves from these three modes of material nature. So once we understand that science, and if we are able to act in an intelligent way, that is what is known as buddhya yukta. So intelligent way means acting with intelligence means buddhya yukta. So if we are able to do that, then we will be able to free ourselves from the modes of material nature. So that's what Krishna is saying, that karmajam buddhi yuktahi palam tyaktva manishinaga janma bandha vinirmukta padam gachanti anamayam. So that's what Krishna is saying, that so if we by thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth, death, and attain the state beyond all miseries. So that's what Krishna is teaching us. So we need to act. So there is palam tyaktva manishnaga, means by giving up the attachment to the results. Palam means results, tyaktva means giving up. So if you give up the attachment to the results, that's what is known as buddhi yukta. That's what buddhi yukta means, acting with intelligence. So buddhi yukta. So if we are able to use intelligence, if we are having intelligence, means we should not be attached to the results of activities. So that is the real meaning of the intelligence. Not like if you are able to solve some mathematical equations or this or that very fast and we have high IQ level. So that is not at all intelligence. The real intelligence is to realize and understand that we are not the body, we are the soul. And our attachment to everything in this material world is binding the soul to this body. So if you understand that fact, and if you are able to give up the attachment to the results, palam tyaktva, so that means we are able to act with intelligence. So that's we are understanding. So Krishna then is teaching us in the Dhyana Yoga how to meditate, how to control our mind, how to focus our mind on the Supreme Lord and make our mind as our best friend. If we control our mind is best friend. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So all these things we are able to understand. So now in the 13th chapter also we studied, Krishna taught us very clearly that all the activities themselves are created by the modes of nature. Not only the activities are performed, done by the executor by the modes of nature, but they are also created by the modes of nature. So nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. Whereas we are creating our own suffering or enjoyment, our own. So that's what we are creating. So we are not creating any activity. We are not doing any activity, and we are not the cause for the results of our activities, and simply getting ourselves attached to the results of our activities, we are becoming the cause for our own sufferings and enjoyments. So that's what is happening. So that we should not do. We should not be attached to the results of the activities. We should be attached to Krishna with the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. We need to understand that we are the soul and Krishna is the super soul, and simply getting ourselves attached to the super soul, Krishna, with the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. So then we will lose all our attachments to everything in this material world. So at that point of time, we will be able to really ourselves get freed from this material world. So the Atma, the soul, can be freed from this material world and go to Golok. So not everyone in this world can do that, which we studied many, many times. Only 1 in 1,000 can do that. And we are very fortunate that we are that 1 in 1,000 trying to do that, trying to follow that. So then we understood in this chapter, 13th chapter, Krishna taught us very clearly, answered all the questions asked by Arjuna, that Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnana, Jnaya, and everything. So then towards the end, Krishna is teaching, even giving us a very nice example to understand that how we are the soul. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all pervading. So we know that the sky is everywhere. Yatha sarvakatam saukshmyat Akasham nopalipyate. So because it is saukshmyat, means it is sukshma, means it is subtle. So the sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything. So it doesn't mix with anything. Even this earth itself is going in the sky, is traveling in the sky around the sun, and the sun also is traveling. Everything is traveling, but the sky is not mixing with anything. So like that, the soul situated in Brahman Visan does not mix with the body. The soul is there inside this entire body, through those situated in the body. Sarvatra avasita dehe tadatma nopalipyate. So the soul doesn't mix with the body. So that part we understand very clearly, that we are not the body, we are the soul, and we are inside this body, and we don't mix with this body like the sky doesn't mix with anything. So as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness. So when there is a sun, when sun rises, everything becomes so bright. So similarly, the soul which is inside the body, it is making our body bright. So it's illuminating our body by consciousness, because of the soul. So that way we need to understand the difference between soul and body. Those who see with eyes of knowledge, that's what Jnana Chakshusha. Jnana Chakshusha means eyes of knowledge. So the difference between the body and the knower of the body. There is Kshetra and Kshetri. Kshetra is the body and Kshetri is the knower of the body. So Antaram Jnana Chakshusha. So one who is able to see the difference between the body and the soul, and can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in material nature. So that is moksha. Moksha is the liberation. So bhuta prakriti moksham cha. So vidu, those who understand how we can liberate ourselves from this material nature, yanti te param. So they actually reach attain to the supreme goal. So that's what we are doing it. We are understanding that we are not this body, and this body is made up of matter, and we are the soul. The soul is completely spiritual. So all these things we understand the difference between body and the soul. So we will be able to get liberation from the bondage. So now today we are starting the 14th chapter, the three modes of material nature. Krishna is just devoting the entire chapter for this particular topic, the three modes of material nature. We will not find it anywhere else, in any other book, any other scripture, any other religious, any other things. We will not find this knowledge about the three modes of material nature. So there is gunas, three gunas. So this is very important science, very, very important science. Only these three gunas are governing, they are controlling everyone. So we think that we are doing everything. No. If you see a big city which is developing and a lot of constructions going on, very high scraper buildings, this, that, roads, all kinds of things are done by only the three gunas, not by us. We think that we are doing everything, but we are not doing it. And that also, when the war happens, everything is getting bombed and destroyed and all such things. That is also done by the three gunas. So we don't do anything. So everything is done by only the three modes of material nature. We are not the doer. We are not doing anything. So that's what we need to understand. So here, Krishna is saying that, again I shall declare you this supreme wisdom. Paramboyaga pravakshami jnananam jnanam uttamam. So the sages, by knowing this, they have attained supreme perfection. Yajnatva munayaka sarve param siddhi mithogata. So in the past, many sages, by getting this knowledge, by understanding this knowledge, they have attained the supreme perfection. So this sloka number 2, verse number 2 is so important, which I quote very often, that idam jnanam upashritya mama sadharmyam agata sargepi nopajayante pralaye navyadanticha. So when we take shelter unto this knowledge, this Bhagavad Gita knowledge, idam jnanam, this knowledge, idam means this, jnanam means knowledge, idam jnanam, this knowledge, upashritya, take shelter. So if you take shelter unto this knowledge, so then we will attain Krishna's nature, mama sa dharmyam agata. So we will attain my nature. So what is Krishna's nature? Sargepi nopajayante pralaye navyadanticham. So when this material world is created, we won't take birth here. When this material world is annihilated, we won't be disturbed. So we know that this material world is actually created and annihilated. That we know that. That is what is known as Prabhavam Pralayam. So that's what is happening. So once we get this knowledge, when we attain Krishna's nature, so that means we will reach the supreme destination, that is Krishna's well, Goloka. Once we are there, here, when this material world is created and annihilated, we are not disturbed. So that's what Krishna is saying, that by becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own. This established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution. So that's what Krishna is teaching. Then we understand that the total material substance called Brahman. So that's what is the entire this material substance, everything is called Brahman, is the source of birth. So we are all part of this Brahman. So, and it is that Brahman I impregnate. Mama yoniki mahat Brahma tasmin garbham dadam yagam. So I impregnate that Brahman, making possible the births of all living beings. So, overall how this material world is created. So Krishna is the source. Krishna is, in fact, in the next sloka itself, Krishna is saying that I am the seed-giving father. Aham bija prataka pita. It should be understood that all species of life was son of Kunti are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father, the original father. So that's what we need to understand. We think that we have our fathers, our mother, parents, and all such things, but originally everything is coming from Krishna, and Krishna impregnated this Brahman, and that's what Mahat Brahman. Krishna is the seed-giving father. So now this fifth sloka is very important sloka, where Krishna is teaching us that material nature consists of the three modes, that is goodness, passion, and ignorance. Sattvam, Rajas, Tama iti gunaha prakriti sambhavaga. So Sattvam, Rajas, Tama. So Sattva guna, Rajoguna, and Tamo guna. So these are the three gunas. Sattvam means the mode of goodness, Rajo means the mode of passion, and Tamoguna is the mode of ignorance. So they are born from the Prakriti, Prakriti Sambhavaga. So Prakriti means the nature, the material nature, Krishna's external energy. So from which it is formed, which is born. So Prakriti Sambhavaga. So these three gunas actually binding the soul inside this body. So that's what Nibandranti. Nibandranti means conditioning, binding. So Dehe, Dehinam. Dehe is the body, Dehinam is the soul. So we are inside this body. Our very birth in this world itself is because of the modes of nature. Because we are controlled by the modes of nature, the proof that we are having a material body in this material world, that itself is a proof that we are controlled by the modes of nature. Because these three modes of nature only is actually caging us inside this material body. We are inside this body, it's because of the modes of nature. So that's why Sattvam, Rajas, Tama iti gunaha prakriti sambhavaka nibandhanti mahabahu dehi dehinam abhyam. So once we are freed from the modes of nature, so then we won't be forced to accept material body again. Once we are completely freed from the modes of nature, then we will go to Krishna's well, Goloka. So we are no longer forced to accept a material body. So now we are forced inside this body, depending upon what body we get. So we are able to do what that body can do it. That's it. We may wish to do a lot of things. We may wish to fly ourselves. We may wish to go. We may wish to do a lot of things. But can we do it? No, because our body can't do it. So there are limitations with our body. So our body, also the eyes, how much we can see, how much we can hear, all such things, there are limitations. Our senses are imperfect. So that way we need to understand that we are stuck, we are forced, we are caged inside this body by the three modes of material nature. The soul, we are the soul, we are not the body, we are the soul, and these three modes of material nature has bound us inside this body, and we are going through this janma, mrityu, jara, dukkha, vyadi. So there is birth, death, old age, disease, all such things are happening to our body. So we need to realize and understand this fact and free ourselves from the three modes of material nature, then we can actually go to Goloka. So material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, Almighty Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. So that's what Krishna is teaching. He becomes conditioned by these modes. So that's why we should not come into contact with these modes of nature. So we should be actually getting ourselves in contact with the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna with the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. So that's why Krishna is teaching us in the next sloka that the mode of goodness, now he is comparing all these three different modes. So it's a very important chapter for us to understand the difference between these three modes of nature. So the mode of goodness, Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat, being purer than the others, Prakasakam. So it's illuminating. Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat Prakashakam. So Prakasakam Anamayam. It is sinless one. So without any sinful reaction. So Anamayam Sukha Sangena Padna Dijnana Sangena Chanagam. So it binds onto the Sukha Sangena, means it's bind onto the happiness. And Jnana Sangha means knowledge. So if we are always influenced by the mode of goodness, then it gives us the happiness and it gives us the knowledge, because knowledge brings happiness. Without knowledge, we won't be happy. So ignorance is not blissful. Ignorance is dangerous. Only knowledge means it is knowledge is happiness. So that's what Krishna is saying, that if we are in the mode of goodness, that gives us the knowledge and happiness. So that means we will be able to, once we get the knowledge, then we will be able to completely free ourselves from the modes of nature. So the mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings. So there is, O son of Kunti, and because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material fruitive actions. So that's what it is. Rajo ragatmakam vidhi trishna sanga samudbhavam tannibadnati kaunteya karma sankena dehinam. So karma sangha. So that is known as karma bandha. So we are forced to work. We are forced to act. So that is happening because we are influenced by the mode of Rajoguna. So that is the problem. So, and how the Rajoguna comes to us, how we are getting affected by the mode of passion, once we have attachment, this raga. So raga is the attachment. Once we have attachment to the material sense objects, so that means we have material desires. So then we will immediately come under the control of the mode of passion. We will be immediately attacked by the mode of Rajoguna. If we are having material attachments to material sense objects or material sense enjoyment, so that means 100% sure that we will be controlled by the mode of Rajoguna. So then we will be forced to act. So then karma sangena deganam. Then we cannot be free. We will be forced to act. Karma sangena deganam. So that's what is happening with the Rajoguna. Whereas the Tamoguna is actually the mode of passion. So that's what we studied. Then Tamoguna is the mode of darkness born of ignorance. So there is tamas ajnanajam vidhi. Ajnana means no knowledge, ignorance. So because of ignorance, it is born. So not having any knowledge, nothing. So is the delusion of all embodied living entities. So the results of tamoguna are madness, indolence, and sleep. So that's what Krishna is saying, that which bind the conditioned soul. So that is pramada alasya nidrabi. Pramada alasya nidrabi. So that's what is the madness, indolence, and sleep. So that's what the tamoguna. Tannibadnati bharata. So sattva binds one to happiness and knowledge, and rajoguna binds one to karma, that is activities, karma sangena, whereas the tamoguna binds one to madness, indolence, and sleep. So these are all the three modes of material nature. And the problem is that sometimes the mode of goodness is predominant, sometimes the mode of passion, sometimes the mode of ignorance. So that's what is happening. So, but Krishna is in the 9th sloka, is summarizing all these three slokas together, 6, 7, 8. 6th sloka is that Sattvagunam. So it binds conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. Whereas 7th sloka is the Rajoguna, which bound to material fruitive actions. And then the 8th sloka is the Tamogunam, the mode of ignorance that binds to madness, indolence, and sleep. Now, summarizing all these three, Krishna is saying that, O son of Bharatam, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness. Passion conditions one to fruitive action. And ignorance covering one's knowledge binds one to madness. That's it. All these three slokas is summarizing in one sloka here in the 9th sloka. So we understand it very clearly. So there is Sattvam Sukhe Sanjayati, Rajaha Karmani Bharata, Jnanam Avrityatu Tamaha, Pramade Sanjayati Uta. Jnanam Avrityatu. So it's covering the knowledge. So Jnanam Avrityatu Tamaga, the mode of ignorance which covers the knowledge, binds one to madness. So that's what we are understanding. So then here in the next sloka, 10th sloka, Krishna is saying that sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the modes of passion and ignorance, O son of Bharat. Sometimes the mode of passion defeats goodness and ignorance, and at other times, ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy. So rajastamascha vibhuyaga sattvam bhavati bharata rajaga sattvam tamaschaiva tamaga sattvam rajastata. That's what Krishna is teaching. So we are understanding everything very scientifically, how these three modes of material nature are acting on us. So the manifestation of the mode of goodness can be experienced when all the gates of the body are illuminated by knowledge. So that's what. So when we have the knowledge, so when we experience the mode of goodness, so that means all the gates of our body. So we have 9 gates of our body. So that is Krishna is teaching the Navadware Pure Dehi, Navadware Pure. So the gates of all our body. So everything is illuminated by knowledge. So that's what is the mode of goodness. So Sarvadvareshu Dehes means Prakasa Upajayate. Prakasa means illumination. Jnanam yada tada vidyat vivirtam sattvam ityutam. So when the Satuguna increases, so vivirtam means increases. So when the sattva guna increases, when the mode of goodness increases, so that means knowledge increases. When the knowledge increases, so that means we are able to control all our senses and everything. So that's why prakasa upajayate, sarvadvaresu. So we are able to, Krishna says in the 5th chapter, we studied that sarva karmani manasa sanyasyaste sukham vashi navadware pure devi naiva kurvan nakare. So sukham vashi, navadware pure devi means with a city of 9 gates. So he will be able to live happily, Sukham Vashi. So that's what we studied in the 5th chapter. So that is the 2 eyes and 2 nostrils and 2 ears. That makes up 6 and 1 mouth, 7. Then anus, 1 anus and 1 genital. So that makes 9. 7 plus 2, 9. So this 9, city of 9 gates. That's what Sarvadvaris Vegeshman will be able to control all our senses basically with the knowledge. So with the mode of goodness. So that way it illuminates our body. So that's what Krishna is saying, that the manifestation of the mode of goodness can be experienced when all the gates of the body are illuminated by knowledge. Whereas what happens with the mode of passion, actually, there is this sattva guna, rajo guna, or chief of the bharatas. When there is an increase in the mode of passion, then what is going to happen? We already understood that karma sangena. So it is going to increase our bondage to work. So that's what here, when the mode of passion increases, so the symptoms of great attachment, fruitive activity, intense endeavor, and uncontrollable desire and hankering develop. That's what happens with the mode of passion. So lobhaga pravrittir arambhaga karmanam ashammaga sprigha rajasi etani jayante vivirte bharatarshava. So when the Rajoguna increases, so then all these things will happen. So that's why people in this material world, they're very passionate. They're all very much attached to the results. They are always doing, hankering after things, going after things. So that's what is the mode of Rajoguna does. So we have to understand, when people are like that, they are controlled by the mode of passion, mode of Rajoguna. Whereas the mode of ignorance increases. So when there is an increase in the mode of ignorance, or son of Kuru, so darkness, inertia, mareness, and illusion are manifested. So that's what is the mode of ignorance. So aprakasho apravrittischa pramado mohayevacha tamasi etani jayante vivrde kurunandana. When there is an increase in the mode of ignorance, or son of Kuru, darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion. So that's basically, one will become very lazy. So don't do anything and useless. So that is the kind of mode of ignorance. So we understand that all these things are happening because of the 3 modes of material nature only. So once we get this complete knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, when we are able to follow all the instructions given by Krishna in this Bhagavad Gita, so that means when we are not attached to the results of activities anymore, we are simply attached only to Krishna with the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. So what does that mean? That means that we are not influenced by any mode of material nature. We are freed from the 3 modes of material nature. That's what we will understand at the end of this chapter, that Krishna says that once a person is able to attach to myself and do all the activities with devotion unto me, he is freed from all the modes of nature. Otherwise, when we are attached to the material sense objects, so this is what is going to happen. So when one Now, in the next two slokas, Krishna is teaching us that what happens when one dies in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. So, when one dies in the mode of goodness, he attains to the pure higher planets of the great sages. So, that's what happens when a person dies in the mode of goodness. So, that is yada sattve pravritte thu pranayam yati deha brithi tadottam vidam lokan amalan pratipatyate. Amalan means the pure. So we have no impurities. That's what amalan. Amalan. So we will go to the, when one dies in the mode of goodness, he attains to the pure higher planets of the great sages. Uttama Vidam. So Uttama Vidam means the great sages. So that is the loka, we will go there. So even in this material world also, there are many different lokas are there. So many different planets are there. Some planets are full of sages. It's great place and no problems, nothing. And some planets like this earth, material world, it is Rajoguna is very much prominent here in the earth. So everybody is very passionate. Everybody is attached to the results. So that's what we are in this material world. So if we are in the Sattva Guna, we will get elevated ourselves to the higher planets. So, but the problem is that still it's a material world. We may go there, but still we have to die. Only when we are freed from the three modes of material nature, when we go to Golokam, Krishna as well, so then we are not controlled by any mode of nature. So there the life is permanent and blissful. Once we go to Goloka, we are not going to die again. So that means there is no rebirth again. So that life is going to be permanent in Goloka. So that's why Krishna is teaching us that when one dies in the mode of goodness, he attains to the higher planet of the great sages. Whereas when one dies in the mode of passion, he takes birth among those engaged in furtive activities. And when one dies in the mode of ignorance, he takes birth in the animal kingdom. So there is Murda Yoni Sujayate. So that's why if we are at the time of death, if we are controlled by the mode of passion, so then we will again come to earthly planets and we will be again going after the material sense objects with so much of attachments and doing all kinds of activities, intense endeavors, all such things will be happening. Whereas a person in the dying in the mode of ignorance will be Muda Yonisu. Muda Yonisu means they are basically animal species, basically foolish species, animal species. They don't have a lot of brain development. They cannot think much. So that's what happens in the mode of ignorance. So that's what Krishna is teaching us, that the result of pious action is pure and is said to be in the mode of goodness, but the action done in the mode of passion results in misery, and action performed in the mode of ignorance results in foolishness. So that's what Krishna is teaching us. So the result of, so when we are in the mode of goodness, when we act, karmanaka sukrutasyahu satvikam nirmalam palam. So the activities what we perform, karmanakam. So when we are in the mode of goodness, so that is pure. So the results are pure, nirmalam, nirmalam palam. Palam means the results, nirmalam means pure. The results are pure. So whereas rajasastu palam dukkam. So the results of our activities in the rajoguna, in the mode of passion, it is dukkam. Dukkam means miseries. So we will end up with only miseries. Whereas ajnanam tamasaka palam. Ajnanam means ignorance. So in the mode of rajoguna, tamoguna, the ignorance, the result is only ignorance. So ignorance is dangerous. Ignorance is not blissful. So that's what we need to understand. So by Krishna's causeless mercy, we finished up to 16 verses in the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Another like 12 more verses, basically, so 11 more verses, we will be able to finish this chapter next week. Okay, so much of science about the three modes of material nature. Krishna is teaching us here very clearly. So in order to free ourselves from the three modes of material nature, we need to connect ourselves with Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, by focusing our mind on the transcendental sound vibration. So then we will be able to surpass these three modes of material nature. And that's why this knowledge is very important, and realizing and understanding that Krishna is the super soul, we are the soul. So connecting with Krishna is very, very important. So then we will be able to free ourselves from the modes of nature. There is simply no other way other than connecting ourselves with Krishna. So now let us chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra and focus our mind on the transcendental sound vibration. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Radhanath Swamini Namini Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namini. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarini. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnanajana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Kelly, you could hear everything clearly today?
Yes, I could.
Good.
Yeah.
I have a question that is kind of similar to questions I've asked in the past.
Yeah.
If we're not the doers and the modes of nature are, and as covered in past readings, we're not here to enjoy the fruits of activities. We should separate ourselves from the results of activities, and Krishna is the enjoyer. So why have us here at all? What is the relevance of our being part of this whole pageantry? It kind of seems like we're puppets playing a role.
Yes. So I know, as you said, we have discussed these questions in the past also. So I remember that answer also that. So it's very difficult to even, because there is no answer which is discussed in Bhagavad Gita that why we are here. But we know that we will be here until we give up our attachment to the results of activities. That we know that for sure. So what is known as ahankara. So there is something we studied in the third chapter itself. Krishna has used that word when he was teaching us about the three modes of material nature. So in the 14th chapter we are studying, but in the third chapter itself, Krishna said in very important sloka that prakrite kriyamanani gunaki karmani sarvasagam ahankara vimudatma kartakam iti manyate. So that's what Krishna taught us. So that all the activities are carried out by prakriti. So they are done by prakriti only. That means the three modes of material nature. So prakriti kriyamanani gunaki karmani sarvasagam. Whereas ahankara vimudatma, a person due to ahankara, so he thinks that I am the doer. The spirit soul bewildered by the influence of false ego thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. That is the reason we are here, we are continuing here. The reason for ourselves in this world, because when in actuality, when it is done by the modes of nature, but we think that we are doing it and we are actually trying to enjoy the results, thinking that we are doing it when we are not doing it. So that's what is the problem. That's what ahankara vimudatma karta aham iti manyate. So once we give up this ahankara, so that means then we won't be here. That we know that. We know that once we are freed from the three modes of nature, still we will enjoy only. So the enjoyment, the real enjoyment, this trying to enjoy this material sense objects is not an enjoyment at all. So that is the source of our suffering. We think that we are enjoying, but that is in reality, it is not an enjoyment. That is the source of our suffering. That's what Krishna is teaching us. In the 5th chapter, we studied that there is dukkha yonaya evati. So that is the source of our dukkha. So that way, we need to understand that the person here, Krishna is saying that such a liberated person is not attracted to the material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. So he's saying that an intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with material senses. That's what the sources of misery are due to contact with the material senses. So that means dukkha yone evate. Yegi samsparsa jabhoga. Samsparsa jabhoga means contact with material senses. So that's what samsparsa. So whatever the bhoga, whatever the enjoyment, we think that we are enjoying, but really we are not enjoying, because that is our source of our suffering. Dukkha yone evate. Adi antavantaha kaunteya nateshu ramate buddha. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery. So that means, first of all, thinking that we are enjoying here, that itself is not right. That is totally wrong. We are not enjoying. The so-called material sense enjoyment is the source of all our miseries, actually. So that way, it is Adi Anta. Adi means it has got beginning, and Anta means it is end. So it has got both beginning and end. The so-called material sense enjoyment is beginning and end. So we need to have this knowledge. Because we don't have this knowledge, there is ignorance. Because of ignorance, because of not having this knowledge, then our attempt to enjoy the material sense object is binding us to this material well. That is the source of our miseries. So without even understanding that fact, and still thinking that I am the doer, I am doing it, so I want the results, I enjoy the results, I am the enjoyer. So that's what we think in this material way. So that way, unfortunately, we are putting ourselves in trouble. We are suffering, we are struggling. So that is the reason we are continuing to be here. So that is the reason we keep coming back to this earth again and again. So once we realize this fact, and once we understand that we are not the body, we are the soul, and everything in this material world is temporary, there is nothing to lose. Everything is temporary only. There is nothing to gain, nothing to lose. We are not gaining anything, we are losing. We are not, everything we are gaining, it is only to lose. Ultimately, everyone is the loser at the time of death. A person may become a billionaire, very, very rich, a trillionaire, or whatever it is, but when death comes, nobody can save him. And that person has to leave away everything here for the others to take ownership. So that ownership, what we take here, so we think that we want this, that is mama. So Krishna is saying that nirmama. So we should not claim for any proprietorship, because we think that we want this, but we don't want anything. We finally lose everything. So that knowledge we should have. So because of that ignorance, not having that knowledge, because of thinking that we are the doer, so that is the reason we are continuing to be here. So that part we know very well. But again, as we discussed in the past, that how originally in the beginning it happened, that we don't know. And we haven't discussed about that when the house catches fire, that example, we need to escape. So now our goal is only, we know that the house is under fire, we are in trouble, we are in problem, and we know how to escape also. We know the escape route is given. Bhagavad Gita knowledge is there. Just follow Bhagavad Gita and understand Bhagavad Gita, and just perform everything based on Bhagavad Gita. Like, then we will be able to free ourselves from the modes of nature. In fact, the rest of the 14th chapter, we are going to study that even at length. Arjuna is going to ask nice questions, and Krishna is going to answer everything. If we just follow that, we know that for sure we will be able to give up ahankara, the three modes of material nature. We will be able to free from the three modes of material nature. So that way is there for us. And once we escape, once we reach Goloka, then we can really find out why in the beginning it happened to us. So, but now we know that it's happening to us. Why it is happening to us, we know that now. Why we are struggling, why we are suffering, that reason we know very well now, why it's happening to us. So that we know very well. That is because of ahankara only. Because we think that we falsely claiming the results. That is the reason we are bound. So that we know that. So now we should stop that, and then we can actually investigate later on why in the beginning it happened. You got that point, Kari?
Yeah, it's not the most satisfying answer, but it's definitely one. I mean, it makes sense. We can't answer the question because we don't know.
Yes, I know. I agree with you. You know, this question is asked many times also, but yeah, so we cannot, we don't know. One thing we know, that why we are continuing to be here, we know that we know that. We can stop, how we can stop this material existence, that we know that. So that part, since we know that, we just have to follow this, and once we escape, and then maybe we can only contemplate, we can only think that maybe in the beginning we got this ahankara, because of that we are here, something like that. But how we got that ahankara, what happened originally, all such things we don't know. You know, this universe itself is so huge. Like this earth is just a very, very tiny dust piece, correct? It is compared to this universe, correct? So considering that, ourselves trying to know everything is going to be very difficult. So we are just a very, very small, very, very minute, correct? Our existence itself is much smaller than an atom, correct? Much, much smaller when we compare to the size of the universe. So that way, I think we should be fortunate that we know at least this much now. We know a way to achieve happiness, permanent happiness with this knowledge. We know a way to control our mind. So we know the relationship between body, senses, minds, intelligence, and everything. So all these sciences, we know that. So that way we have to be very, very happy, actually.
Okay. I'm assuming it's going to be something that's on my mind, because yeah, I like learning about what I think of as the physics of how things work. Like, what are the rules? What are the structures? And I'm going to continue to be curious about that.
Yeah. I think there is nothing wrong in being like that. So only the thing is that because my knowledge is very much limited to this Bhagavad Gita only, 18 chapters, 700 verses. As I explained to you in the past also, I wanted to finish this to read the next, but I'm still doing it. It is so much knowledge. So for you, that particular question, there is no answer given here. So that is the problem. Yeah. So even there is much more to understand here about all these things. So like why in the beginning we are here. We know that why we are here right now. How we can stop this, we know that. But in the beginning, how it actually happened, it is beyond our imagination. That's it. It's inconceivable. That's it. Yeah. You can continue. We can continue to explore. If I find out an answer from some other resources, I will definitely let you know. Yeah, it's not there in Bhagavad Gita. That is the only thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I will try to stop asking about that, although I will continue to be curious about it.
Yes, there's nothing wrong in being curious about it, because this question has been asked many times in the past also. So I've always given that same example, that house under fire answer only. But because even whatever we know, all these things, and like so much, it is because I'm doing this for so long, studying again and again, so able to like connect with different verses. So that's why we are able to get a very comprehensive knowledge, correct? Otherwise, just by reading one sloka or something, it's very difficult to get everything, correct? So it's such a continuous supply of knowledge, this Bhagavad Gita, source of knowledge. So much to connect. I think it's nothing wrong in being curious about that. Whenever we find some answer for that, first thing we need to realize everything what is given here, and yes, we will do it. For example, today we studied so much about the modes of nature, correct?
I'm curious about the modes of nature in that, okay, so it's goodness and passion and ignorance. I could be wrong about this, but it seems like goodness is obviously a positive, a goal. Ignorance is obviously a negative, something to be avoided. And passion seems like it could be neutral, although it could be negative. So I'm curious that it seems like they are on different axes, so to speak. Like, why are they not all on the positive and you want to avoid the negative? Or why are they all not on the negative and you want to avoid that and do the positive? Because, like, go ahead.
No, passion is not in the neutral. There is passion and ignorance. Both are negative side only. Only goodness is positive. So that is the thing. So now if we give up passion and ignorance, so if we are in goodness, then we will be able to liberate ourselves. So that's what we understand. So passion is binding us to karma. So it is also a negative side, which is binding us to this material world. Ignorance means there is no hope for us. We are not going to get out of this world at all. So because not having the knowledge, ignorance means no knowledge. So passion means so much of intense desire to enjoy the material sense objects. So both are on the negative side only. As far as our material life is concerned, we are going to continue to come back. Whereas Sattva Guna, the mode of goodness, leads to knowledge, happiness, and that means liberation, everything. Yeah.
Okay, so it's more that instead of there being three axes, goodness and badness, passion and stoicism, I guess, would be the opposite of passion, and ignorance and intelligence, instead of wanting to go to the more positive end of each of those three spectrums, the goal is to focus more on the mode of goodness and ignore the other two.
That is correct. The goal is actually to focus more on this Bhagavad Gita, what Krishna says in many slokas. So if we just understand and just follow in our life, exactly. That's what I always say in my other, all the classes. So there are few things, in fact, 4 things. If these 4 things, if we can focus fully on that, then everything else will be okay. So one thing is that ourselves studying this Bhagavad Gita, so which is supposed to be a daily thing actually, because getting this knowledge. So that's why I'm teaching that Bhagavad Gita, 1 sloka every day also. So when we are always, because that makes a lot of tremendous impact, big change. Like considering ourselves doing it once a week, it's also because we are very committed, correct? So every week we are studying, so that way it's going on good. So my experience in the past with others, like when you do once a week, so 1 week they miss it, they don't come, and then there is a 2 weeks gap, correct? Then the progress is not that fast. It will slow down, correct? Sometimes they miss 2 weeks or a month, then they won't come at all. So then it's a completely, it will stop. So whereas I'm seeing a big change when I'm doing this every day. So at least 6 days a week, the daily Bhagavad Gita, only on Sunday only I don't have, Sunday night, all other days I have. So I see the people, the devotees who join every day, that time they dedicate, they commit and study. So we see a big change in their life. They themselves have shared their experience many times, that they are, the way they act, they think about life, everything is changing, because this knowledge is meant to do that, correct? This knowledge will give us so much of scientific information that we will see the world through the eyes of knowledge, jnana chakshusha, correct? So that is one thing. And second thing is this chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is another thing, which to focus our mind on the transcendental sound vibration, then we should forget about everything in this material world, this chanting. So this is a very scientific process, which in the 6th chapter Krishna is teaching us, we have covered also. So if we are able to do that, Srila Prabhupada is recommended to do 16 rounds. What we just did was just one round. So that is 108 times. So doing that for 16 rounds means it roughly takes about an hour, 45 minutes, or close to 2 hours, something like that. Assuming that it takes about 7 minutes per round, so 7 to 8 minutes. So it will take a decent amount of time in a daily life if you are able to do that. So that means we are able to practice our mind focusing on the sound vibration. So that means we are able to slowly getting ourselves detached from everything else in this material world. So that if you are able to do, these are the second thing. And the third one is that in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says a lot about the food what we eat. So this, it should be in the mode of goodness. We are going to study that in the 17th chapter also. So the food is actually, when we eat the food in the mode of goodness, that increases the duration of life, purifies one's existence, and gives strength, health, happiness, and satisfaction. So such foods are juicy, fatty, wholesome, and pleasing to the heart. So that's what Krishna says in the 17th chapter. We will study that. So that we need to focus, and that food has to be offered to Krishna, and it should be taken as prasadam, what you call it as prasadam. So when you actually give it to, offer to God out of love and devotion, that's it. So foods dear to those in the mode of goodness increase the duration of life, purifies one's existence, and give strength, health, happiness, and satisfaction. Such foods are juicy, fatty, wholesome, and pleasing to the heart. But foods that are too bitter, too sour, salty, hot, pungent, dry, and burning are dear to those in the mode of passion. Such foods cause distress, misery, and disease. So our body, our health, it depends upon what kind of food we are eating. So similarly, food that are prepared more than 3 hours before being eaten, food that is tasteless, decomposed, and putrid, and food consisting of remnants and untouchable things is dear to those in the mode of darkness. So that way, if we are able to focus on the food in our daily life, so getting good vegetables, fruits, and with full of juice in it, and offering to God. So that's what is very important. So when we Krishna is teaching us that yajnasista sinagasanto muchyante sarva kilbishay. So the devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. So that way, these are all the things where we are able to follow Bhagavad Gita. So that is the third thing. So focusing on what we eat, food. So that's a very important thing. And chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, there is the second thing, focusing on what we think. So focusing on what we eat, controlling, regulating what we eat, and regulating what we think. So then the important fourth activity is ourselves sharing this message to others, because that's what brings us so much of happiness, and that assures that we are going to be freed and we go to Goloka. Krishna says that ya idam paramam guhyam mad bhakte swavidasri bhakti mayi param kritva mam yevesasi asamsayam. So for one who explains this supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me. So these four things, if we are making it as our daily routine, so I think then over a period of time we will see a big change in our life. So materially speaking, we don't have to lose anything, and whatever we are in, we will be able to see Krishna is actually helping us. So that's why Krishna is saying that in this endeavor there is no loss or diminution. Even a little advancement in this path and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. We are not going to lose anything. Materially speaking, we will be able to feel Krishna's hands. We will be able, Krishna takes care of everything. So that way, these four things, if we are able to do it, so then this life is actually very successful, actually. So, is that clear, Kelly?
It's interesting, and I'll need to read more about it. What was the chapter that you were in when it was talking about the food corresponding with the modes of nature?
The 17th chapter.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you can go read the 17th. Yeah. 17th chapter, 8, 9, 10 slokas. 8, 9, and 10.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so much is there actually for us to see.
Yeah, and I'm interested that the structure of the book is also very interesting, since so this is chapter 17. We're talking about the three modes of nature in chapter 14, but there's also mention of it earlier in the book as well.
Yes,
So
that's
it's
correct.
kind of threaded throughout.
Yes, you are right. You are very much true. Yeah, because everywhere, starting from the third chapter onwards until second chapter, second chapter. It talks about little bit, very little bit, but starting from the third chapter, everywhere, especially 17th chapter and even the first half of the 18th chapter, it's all fully about these three modes of nature. Yeah. So what we do, the food, what we eat, and the sacrifice, yajna, dana, tapa, the charity, the austerity, then jnana, knowledge, then the duty, karma, and the performer, everything, jnana, and then already I said jnana, then understanding, there is the intelligence, and then determination, then happiness, everything Krishna says, how they fall into these three modes of material nature. For each one of those things, he dedicated three slokas to teach us very clearly. It's very so much in deep, actually, in depth. Anything we need to read and study again and again. So much knowledge, science is given there. Just in one book, 18 chapters, that's it.
Well, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Kerry. Thank you. And see you. Have a nice rest of the week. Next week.
You too.
See you next week. Okay. Bye.
Bye.